in Chicago to attend
Why
an
is she
art
just
conference
standing there like
that was
that?
going on later that
Do you think
week.
she needs something to eat? Is she
Party
okay?
ready,
It's hard to
automatic
tell.
timer on, and dressed
It's so odd,
in a
really.
blue white
It's
gown.
a wedding dress she's wearing. It's so cold outside. It's bloody freezing. I wonder if we can extend a hand, maybe. We could buy her breakfast or something. I wonder what happened to her. Pull over to the curb. I recognize her face now. We went to school together.
Some people were so enthralled that they grabbed their cell phone
Oh,
to
God.
snap a photograph
Oh,
of the bride to keep
it was the largest wedding event in the country.
I walked by the Louis Vuitton window
I showed up this
earlier
morning
that
at the
morning
cathedral.
before the shoot on my way to breakfast.
He was the president
I
of
kept
the
thinking
largest
about that
corporation in the
display.
world. I
Then
didn't know what he was doing. He was responsible for murdering all those people and put thousands more out of work and on the street.
Whose window dresser brilliantly displayed.
There was an investigator from the Attorney General's office at the church this morning.
In the city,
they found him dead.
That everyone was someone.
They think it was cyanide poisoning and found an empty glass by his bed.
And that this city was the place that dreams were made. As Chicago.
You don't understand. I worked all of my life for the rights of people. Oh, God, the news about this will never leave me. And the horror that he caused I saw with my own eyes. Apparently, the United States Attorney General called him Tuesday afternoon. Investigators said that he was going to be prosecuted for illegal practices that were unconstitutional and immoral. The investigator showed me a briefing of the film. The film that was submitted as evidence against him. These heinous practices he employed. I never flew with him out of the country to know what he was doing. I never asked him for anything. I have perpetuated the voice of women, children, and men of every walks of life since I was a child, for God's sake. When I schooled in Chicago, it was there, in the city, who always gave me the feeling that everyone was someone, and that the city was the place dreams were made. Chicago had a place for all walks of life to reside side by side now. I stopped today in front of the Louis Vuitton window where the birdcage purses with light bulbs on inside said that all people here had an awareness of the hardships that the individual could incur in the world. And isn't that where equality begins? I looked again for a time at the Louis Vuitton window, the Victorian-style brass bird cages, my wedding gown, and my pearl veil crown. Oh, God! It wasn't long ago that women could not even cast a ballot in an election in the United States of America. And well, those women who had enough money weren't allowed to dream in full. All of these transitory thoughts came to mind. Our young women of today, women that fought for the rights of all of us yesterday. Women who worked many hours to put their children in good schools. Women who could not afford to have good schools for the children or for themselves. Women who had to marry because society said unwed mothers and old maids were not acceptable. Women who of seeing more and achieving more. I was invited to Yale, where my friends spoke about inequalities in even the best cities of the world today. He talked about the feminine voice who, throughout history, perpetuated humanities through a more gentle voice, or a more gentle way. In more recent history, our feminine voices have been somewhat realized. Many young women in the United States of America today hardly have time to think, let alone have time to dive into their intellectual selves. A few years back, in 2000, I was working with a doctor of education who was also a woman. And she said to me, "Don't you think it will bother him that you're smart?" That statement was made in the 21st century, don't you see? Young women of today grow in all sorts of ways, yet when they really grow up, they have the potential to be. Many women are married before you know it. And then, if the light bulbs inside of all of our communities were all working with purses attached, what would most women dream to be? Look at the world. Where are the grown-ups? That investigator films, he committed heinous, awful crimes against humanity, morality, dignity, imperial, spiritual laws were broken. And when they all look at me now, all they will see is him. I don't know where I am. Are we going backwards? Are we going forward? As all these magnificently crafted purses made by magnificently talented teams of people all go on display within brass bird cages. Oh, so will I, so will I. Tiny birds. It gets one thinking, will the purse make me fly? And when I do fly, how do I become? And when I do fly, do I become an endangered species? Must I, then, too, have a cage to protect me in the world from the world itself? With our top brass lighting our way to freedom, instead of freedom, choosing intellect, and then using intellect to plan our communities once we've gained control of all of our focused knowledge. In the 21st century, who are we? Transitory thoughts came to mind again when I looked at the Louis Vuitton window. I saw all those purses in bird cages with light bulbs on inside, meaning literally the lights are on inside the places that we don't hide, and then perhaps then we may fly.